Hello and welcome to the Mary Stodowska-Curie Actions Individual Fellowship webinar in preparation for the September 9th deadline. My name is Geraldine Canny and I'm the MSCA National Delegate and National Contact Point for Ireland. The goal of this webinar is to provide you with advice on how to write a competitive proposal. The information therein complements and is taken from the 2020 Guide for Applicants, which you should use in order to write your proposal. Irish HEIs and institutions welcome excellent researchers incoming from abroad. If you are a researcher located in another country and you wish to apply with an Irish supervisor for the individual fellowship, please do look at the respective websites for the different institutions below and also the Institutes of Technology and TU Dublin to find an appropriate supervisor. Once you've done that, you might want to send them an expression of your interest for the project with your CV, and you can enter into discussions with them thereafter. If they agree to go forward, they then put you in touch with the research officer at that institution. It is very important to do this early and to prepare early because your application is prepared in collaboration with not only your supervisor, but also your institution, which will provide you with infrastructural support information necessary for a successful proposal. So please do start this process early. The Irish MSCA office is located at the Irish Universities Association in Dublin. It is financed by and operated in joint partnership with the Irish Research Council. The missions of the office are threefold. Firstly, to promote and provide information about Mary Stodowska-Curie actions to researchers in the academic and non-academic sectors around the country. Secondly, to provide high-quality support and training to applicants. And thirdly, to contribute to MSCA policy initiatives.
Here you can see the agenda of today's webinar. Initially, I'll provide an overview of MSCA-IF before speaking briefly about intersectoral mobility, the evaluation process, and then going through the different parts of the application in sequential order.
MSCA-Individual Fellowships is an individual fellowship to support a period of mobility. It's a research and training fellowship. Full or part-time fellowships can be carried out. This will be detailed later, but the application must be written on a full-time basis, and if you wish to work part-time after the award has been granted, this must be agreed upon by the supervisor and agreed upon by the project officer at the Research Executive Agency. This fellowship is for experienced researchers. The criteria will be given on a subsequent slide. There is no upper age or experience limit. The fellowships are fully funded with salary, research costs, etc. financed, as will be detailed on a subsequent slide. The host organisation or beneficiary can be in the academic or non-academic sector. Please note that for the society and enterprise specifically, the host organisation or beneficiary must be in the non-academic sector. The goal of Mary S. Curie Actions in general is to provide high-quality training and career development to researchers and to promote mobility. And the deadline this year is at 5 p.m. Brussels time or 4 p.m. Irish time on the 9th of September.
The goal of individual fellowships is to enhance the creative and innovative potential of experienced researchers who wish to diversify their individual competence in terms of skill acquisition through advanced training, international and intersectoral mobility. Two main requirements determine applicant eligibility. Firstly, with respect to research experience, the researcher or applicant must have at least 4 years full-time research experience or a PhD before the call deadline. Any gaps, career breaks, etc. should be clearly explained and clear to the evaluator from the CV. Secondly, two types of mobility rule apply. Firstly, the general rule, whereby the applicant cannot apply for a fellowship in a country where they have lived or carried out their main activity for more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to the call deadline. Secondly, for some fellowships, the relaxed mobility rule applies, whereby the researcher cannot apply for a fellowship in a country where they have lived or carried out their main activity for more than 36 months in the 5 years prior to the call deadline. Do double check you're eligible before you begin the application and address any queries to the research office or main contact in the host organisation. Now detail the different types of individual fellowships. Firstly, for European fellowships, of which there are 4 types. The standard fellowship is of a maximum duration of 24 months, and the general mobility rule applies. Applicants can be of any nationality. Career Restart fellowships are of a maximum duration of 36 months. Here, the researcher must have taken a career break or worked outside research for at least 12 months in the 18 months preceding the application deadline. The relaxed mobility rule applies. Reintegration fellowships of a maximum duration of 12 months. The applicant must be an EU citizen or long-term resident living and working outside the EU who wishes to return to Europe in order to carry out this fellowship. The relaxed mobility rule applies. Fourthly, Society and Enterprise Fellowships, which are of a maximum duration of 24 months. Here, the researcher carries out their fellowship in the non-academic sector, so in a company, CSO, NGO, regulatory authority, National Archive, or other such organisation. The relaxed mobility rule applies. Now for global fellowships, which have a maximum duration of 36 months. Here the researcher can go to a host organisation in a third country for 12 to 24 months. There is a mandatory return phase to the host organisation of at least 12 months. The applicant must be an EU citizen or long-term resident of at least 5 years in a member state or associated country, and the general mobility rule applies to the third country host only. Please note that a secondment can take place at the start of the action, where a maximum of 3 months may be spent at the beneficiary or partner organisation before going to the third country. So in the case of an Irish applicant, they can stay at an Irish university or IOT for 3 months prior to going abroad to the third country for 24 months and then returning for the final 12 months to the host organisation or beneficiary in Ireland. This slide displays how the IF process works. Firstly, for European fellowships, the researcher applies with the European host. The host or beneficiary signs a contract or agreement with the EC. The host claims the grant and employs the researcher. Secondly, for global fellowships, here the researcher applies with the European host, supported by the non-European host where they go on the outgoing phase. The European host or beneficiary signs a contract with the EC, and the non-European host signs an agreement with the European host. The European host claims the grant and employs the researcher, also whilst they are seconded to the non-European host. Here, the IF funding model is shown. No budget is required during the application stage. It is automatically calculated when the number of months are entered. It is divided into researcher costs, here shown per month, as well as institutional costs, also shown per month. The family allowance is calculated for those who are married or in a permanent partnership at the time of application. This is not modified after the commencement of the fellowship. Rates in the table are inclusive of employers' costs, and a country coefficient applies to the living allowance. For Ireland, this is 115.6%. And here you can see then the estimated gross salary. This will obviously differ from country to country.
This slide displays the success rates for last year's call. In this column, you see the success rate for Ireland as opposed to the average EU success rate. Last year, we did very well in Society and Enterprise Fellowships. We typically also do well in the global fellowships, but overall the performance has been good. Nonetheless, this remains a very competitive fellowship scheme. Please note that for those resubmitting, the headings are the same this year, and it is worth your while if you're eligible to resubmit, as you will get feedback from the previous year. The resubmission success rate was 22% last year, as opposed to the overall 13.1% success rate.
There are 2 sectors in MSCA. The academic sector is composed of higher education institutions, public research organisations, and private and non-profit research organisations. The non-academic sector comprises industry, SMEs and MNCs, CSOs, NGOs, charities, regulatory bodies, national archives, and government and public sector organisations. Strong participation by the non-academic sector must feature in your proposal in order for it to be successful. This intersectoral activity can be carried out in different ways. Firstly, by doing secondments. This means spending time in another organisation during the fellowship as part of the research project, maximum 6 months. Here, the applicant receives hand-on training in research and transferable skills. Secondly, by carrying out short visits, which are short-term in days. These comprise spontaneous trips outside your organisation with the purpose of data collection, shadowing, training workshops in the other sector, etc. Thirdly, co-supervision is an integral part of such applications, as there is almost always an additional supervisor with expertise which will complement that of the main supervisor. Fourthly, by spending time in an entity with a capital or legal link to the beneficiary. For example, your host might be connected to another entity in which you can spend time. For example, a spin-off company, which is still part of a university. Please note that this does not constitute a secondment. During European fellowships, the applicant can be seconded to any host organisation in Europe. Ideally, a secondment should take place in a different sector, i.e. academic to non-academic and vice versa. As mentioned, for such fellowships, in this instance, the maximum secondment duration is 6 months, which can be split into shorter periods, but please ensure not to include too many secondments, as this could be seen as not feasible by evaluators. And do specify the host organisation for the secondment in the proposal. Part B1 and Part B2 templates. Please do adhere to the templates. Part B1 comprises the excellence, impact and implementation section, which is of course evaluated. This section may not exceed 10 pages, as evaluators will disregard any excess pages. For template B2, there is no page limit. This comprises the CV of the experienced researcher, which may not exceed 5 pages, as well as the capacity of the participating organisations. 1 page for the overview and 1 page for each participating organisation. Ethical aspects are set out in section 6, and the letters of commitment must be included for global fellowships only. For those resubmitting, please note that all the headings are the same as last year. In submitting, applicants must choose one of the 8 scientific areas shown here, as well as 3 to 5 descriptors or keywords, a list of which can be found in Annex 4 of the Guide for Applicants. These should be selected carefully in order of importance. This is done to ensure the most appropriate experts for the proposal evaluation.
After you have submitted your application prior to the deadline on the 9th of September, the REA staff will check the admissibility of your proposal, in that you must be eligible, and a detailed overview of the whole evaluation process is given on pages 28 to 30 of the 2020 Guide for Applicants. Do choose your panel and your up to 5 descriptors carefully, as this governs the assignment of the most suitable evaluators to your proposal. Generally, 3 evaluators are assigned per proposal. Please note that the evaluation is carried out by these 3 individual evaluators independently on the CEP portal. This is followed by a consensus phase where the 3 evaluators discuss your proposal and an evaluation summary report is agreed upon. A score determines the ranking list, and the vice chairs discuss this and they overview the process to ensure everything is carried out correctly. Proposals likely to be funded are subject to an ethics screening. In any case, you must have appropriate authorizations prior to beginning the research if you're successful. In early February next year, all applicants will receive the evaluation summary report of their proposal, giving the strengths and weaknesses for each section.
Here you can see the proposal criteria used by evaluators. They score each subheading individually. Therefore, in order to be successful in the application, all subheadings must be addressed. The criterion scoring method is shown here, ranging from 0 to 5 being excellent. In order to be successful, an average score of approximately 4.7 is necessary in all 3 areas: excellence, impact and implementation. The evaluation criteria, as I just mentioned, and their weighting of 50% for excellence, 30% for impact and 20% for implementation are shown here. In order to be further discussed, the threshold reached must be 70%. However, as you will see in the following slide, in order to be successful, a far higher score is necessary. The suggested length for each sections then are 5 pages for excellence, 2 pages for impact, and 3 pages for implementation. These again are suggestions, but the 10-page limit must not be exceeded.
This slide shows the cutoff scores for last year's call. So these are the thresholds or the lowest score necessary to be successful in each panel. Here you can see for the European fellowships, and on the right for the global fellowships for each panel, chemistry down to SOC AHSS. The career restart and reintegration scores are given here. As I mentioned previously, career restart and reintegration proposals are more highly weighted than the standard European proposals, so do consider applying for those if you are eligible. Here at the bottom of the table, we can see that the score for the Society and Enterprise Fellowships, where the beneficiaries in the non-academic sector, is considerably lower at 82.2%. However, in general, it can be stated these are very competitive, and you're really aiming for a score of 4.6 or 4.7 out of 5 for each 3 sections in order to be successful.
Here are some general tips for proposal writing. A self-explanatory title and a memorable acronym should be used. For resubmissions, do not just use the evaluation summary report. Your new proposal will not be evaluated by the same evaluators last year. Evaluators will have access to the ESR after they have marked your current application. Be aware of the overall weighting of each criterion. You need to score well in all sections in order to be funded. Use the template provided in order to use the exact subheadings. Please do not change these as they match the evaluation template. Put the proposal acronym in the header and put page numbers, format X of Y, in the footer. Layout is of critical importance. Use charts, diagrams, text boxes, figures where you can in order to explain aspects of the project, as this also saves space. Using tables when appropriate is also an effective means to present information in a condensed manner and in addition save space. Do use the correct font size, line spacing, etc. as indicated in the guide for applicants, and ensure any colour diagrams, etc. are also understandable when printed, also in grayscale. Use highlighting where appropriate. For example, bold can be used very effectively, but do not overuse this. Also, use literature reference in the footnotes, and the font size here should be 8 or 9, minimum 8. With respect to language, it is advisable to avoid jargon. The evaluators may well not be experts in your research area, so do make it accessible and clear. Explain any abbreviations, use simple clear text and avoid long sentences. Additionally, avoid too much repetition and refer to other parts of the proposal where necessary. Do not copy and paste information, rather tailor information to fit with your proposal, which is an individual document. Be consistent in the terms used. For example, you can talk in the first or third person, but be consistent throughout the proposal.
Before we start into the subheading starting with excellence, I'd like to remind you that I strongly recommend that you utilise the handbook prepared by this office under the Net for Mobility Plus project, which provides section by section advice on how to write this application, format, underpinning policy, etc. Also, for each section, we provide a strengths section that should characterise your proposal and a weaknesses section. This is important to read as it's important to avoid these commonly critiqued weaknesses. Now, starting with subsection 1.1, quality and credibility of the research innovation project, level of novelty, appropriate consideration of inter multidisciplinary and gender aspects.
Here, for quality of the R&I action, the introduction to discuss the state of the art and specific objectives. Here, given that one goes straight into the excellence section, it is important to start with the overall aim of the individual fellowships and to provide a nice introductory paragraph to the evaluator from the beginning. Here, introduce yourself, the applicant, supervisors, host organisation, and for global fellowships you can include the third country partner organisation and the secondment organisation or organisations if relevant. Explain the importance of the research being carried out and how it addresses a challenge or priority at a global or European level. Do write in a style that is accessible to the non-expert, and again, use figures, tables, charts or diagrams to illustrate where appropriate. To describe the state of the art, break it down into separate short paragraphs. Each paragraph could relate to a research objective. For each paragraph, briefly outline the current level of knowledge in the research area using up-to-date references. If there is state-of-the-art work being carried out by your supervisor or institution or by you, then mention this here. Some applicants may choose to include preliminary data here. This, of course, can be done as long as the page limits are respected. Finish each paragraph with a bold text box statement of how the project is progressing the area beyond the current state of the art. Now for specific research objectives. These should give the evaluator an insight into what research is going to come out of this project. Research objectives should show how this research will go beyond the state of the art described, and each objective should correspond to the research work packages. As such, the objectives should be numbered appropriately and include the corresponding work package in brackets at the end of each objective. For the research methodology and approach, in this section you should describe how the research will be carried out using state-of-the-art techniques, method, equipment, etc. Be careful here as you do not have space to describe everything in detail. In the next slide, I'll show you how you can effectively complete this section whilst saving space. Break this section up into short paragraphs or bullet points to describe the steps or methods you will take to achieve the research objectives proposed. Highlight the experiments, blocks of work to carry out, techniques and equipment that will be used. If a secondment or short visits are included, be specific about why they are needed in terms of the work being carried out. And for each method or steps described, put in brackets the research work package it relates to. Again, you do not need to go into detail here, as the work plan relating to the specific work package will be described in detail in section 3.1. With respect to originality and innovative aspects, here it is advisable to provide bullet points on the original aspects of the proposal. Examples that could be used are given here. It is important to demonstrate how the research being carried out goes beyond the discipline that is strictly yours. Highlight the key interdisciplinary aspects of your proposal, such as the research methodology used, supervision with complementary expertise, dissemination methods, etc. Gender is an important cross-cutting issue for all H2020 applications and should not be forgotten. You should describe any gender aspects in relation to the research you'll carry out. How will you analyse or take into account the possible differences between males and females in the research and innovation content of your project? Here, we advise you to consult this particular web page, which gives various useful tips and resources. The Yellow Window website also provides useful toolkits and training to describe the gender dimension in diverse areas of research. Now for section 1.2, quality and appropriateness of the training and of the two-way transfer of knowledge between the researcher and the host. The quality and appropriateness of the training section should be broken up into two parts. Firstly, explain how the experienced researcher will gain new knowledge during the fellowship at the host organisation. This is transfer of knowledge to the researcher from the host. Also, the applicant should outline the previously acquired knowledge and skills that he or she will transfer to the host organisation. This is transfer of knowledge to the host from the researcher. For global fellowships, it should be explained how the newly acquired skills and knowledge in the third country will be transferred back to the host institution in Europe during the incoming phase. Firstly, For transfer of knowledge to the researcher from the host, the applicant should describe how he or she and their supervisor will develop a personalised career development plan at the beginning of the fellowship. There is no need to include this plan in the application, but do refer to it and describe how it will be used during the fellowship, and describe the main elements or headings therein, such as description of the researcher's training and career needs, planning for publications, and participation in conferences. Also, provide training objectives which should focus on how you, the applicant, achieve the various types of skills. There are 3 types. Core research skills are skills relating directly to your research project. Advanced research skills are research skills that will advance your competencies in the research areas, for example, using a specific state-of-the-art piece of equipment. Transferable and complementary skills are the skills you acquire and transfer to future employment settings. Examples of transferable skills and of advanced research skills that you could use in the writing of your application are shown here. The VTA Researcher Development Framework available at this link is also a useful resource to identify transferable skills and complementary skills. Now, continuing the transfer of knowledge to the researcher from the host, describe the plan on how you will achieve the skills above. For example, training through research, hands-on training activities for developing scientific and transferable skills, training resources at the host and on the job, as well as intersectoral or interdisciplinary transfer of knowledge. Training through research. Here describe how working on your individual research project and with your supervisor and the rest of the research team will enable you to develop core research skills. With respect to training resources for advanced research and transferable skills, your host organisation, secondment organisation and host organisation in a third country for global fellowships should provide you with details on training that can be utilised. For example, induction programs, staff development programs, training courses, workshops, online courses, etc. The more detail you can provide on the different structured training opportunities, the better with respect to location, course content, date, duration, etc. Tables can be used effectively here in order to save space. With respect to on-the-job scientific and transferable skills, you should describe how you will develop skills throughout the project, such as dealing with IP issues, communication and dissemination, etc. Describe who else in the host will support you during the fellowship with these issues. The finance team, technology transfer office, research office, a communication and outreach officer, for example. Also, mention networking skills through working with various members of the institution and external networking or collaborations. If you will go on a secondment or secondments, remind the evaluator about it and why and when these will happen. Also specify what additional knowledge you will gain as a result of the secondment. If you will go on short visits, provide details on other opportunities for exposure to sectors such as industry, charity, National Archive, etc., where you will gain additional skills and knowledge. Now for the second aspect, transfer of knowledge to the host from you, the applicant. Explain what knowledge will be transferred to the host. What are your current expertise, skills, state-of-the-art techniques that could be applied to research in your host organisation? What is the knowledge that you could give them to address current gaps in their knowledge? Existing collaborations or networks that you have from your past work can also be leveraged here. Continuing here, how will you transfer this knowledge to the host? What specific measures will you use to embed this knowledge there and further afield? Examples include mentoring students, delivering workshops, and building collaborations between your host and your past collaborators. For global fellowships, explain how the newly acquired skills and knowledge in the third country will be transferred back to the host institution in Europe. Here, a table such as that shown can be used as it will save space. Using the table, you can list knowledge to be transferred, the audience and the host, how it will be transferred, as well as the benefit to the host. Now I will go through quality of the supervision and of the integration in the team institution, subheading 1.3. This section should be broken up into 2 headings. Discuss the qualifications of the experience of the supervisor or supervisors, and secondly, discuss the hosting arrangements. For global fellowships, both phases should be described. Firstly, discuss the qualifications and experience of the supervisors. Your supervisory committee composition should be described. It is important that this is clear to the evaluator. For European fellowships, your primary supervisor would typically be in the beneficiary, and the co-supervisor could also be a member of the same team or within the same host. If you are doing a secondment, you must have a supervisor for this period also. For a global fellowship, you will have the supervisor in both your European host beneficiary and in your third country host. Here, provide a few sentences on your supervisor or supervisors and their key achievements in the area of research. For example, number of years experience in the field, awards they have won, projects they have coordinated, etc. You must keep the information concise, and a table such as this shown below can be nicely used to highlight the relevant metrics. Also, the complementary skills of a primary supervisor and secondment supervisor can be nicely highlighted in this way. At this point, you should also explain the role of the supervisors in the fellowship, for example, monitoring research progress and assistance with your career development plan. Mention that this document will be reviewed every 6 months with all supervisors involved. Simply refer back to section 1.2 where you have initially described the PCDB. Explain the meeting schedule for progress. For example, in the same institution, you'll have weekly meetings, open door policy, and for co-supervisors or supervisors located abroad, Skype meetings can be held. With respect to describing the hosting arrangements, it's important to note that these refer to the integration of the researcher to their new environment. It does not refer to the infrastructure of the host. Mention briefly here, only briefly, as you will be describing in more detail in section 3.3, whether the host organisation has policies for the integration of researchers. If it has endorsed the Charter and Code, do include this in section 3.4. If the organisation has been awarded the HR Excellence in Research logo, and many Irish HEIs are awardees, do mention this, as well as any other relevant employee and recruitment policies. Now describe the research group or environment as a whole, the various disciplines of research, the opportunities to collaborate during the fellowship, the number of people in the group, the technical support, etc. For example, it should be kept in mind that if your project is ambitious in nature, the fact that you're outlining what areas with which you will receive technical support is important in order for it to be clear to evaluators that the project is feasible. Explain clearly how you will be integrated into this research group or environment and the wider host institutions by internal meetings, induction days, social activities. Refer back to training courses that are offered. Do not detail them again. Explain the international networking opportunities offered by the host. For the secondment host, mention here also how you will be integrated, and do not forget this aspect. As previously mentioned, for global fellowships, the hosting arrangements for both phases should be described, both for the outgoing phase and the incoming phase, where in the latter case, the measures planned for the successful reintegration of the researcher are important to mention. The final part of the excellence section is entitled Potential of the Researcher to Reach or Reinforce Professional Maturity or Independence During the Fellowship, 1.4. Here you should provide an introduction to your career goals. Tell your story to date and what led you to this point in your career. This is an important part of the evaluation where the evaluator can relate and understand you, so keep them interested. Choose the key highlights from your CV in section 4 to show the evaluator your abilities, research achievements, awards received, key conferences, etc. Your CV will not be evaluated, but the information in it will be checked for consistency with the information provided here in this section 1.4. Demonstrate how you have key transferable skills, and at the end of this section, remind the evaluator why you are the best person to do this fellowship to achieve the research results and reach your career goals. As mentioned, your CV will be reviewed to confirm information given in 1.4. Use all the 5 pages and do not exceed them. Describe your 3 major research achievements, for example, giving them 1 paragraph each. You do need an excellent track record appropriate to your career stage, discipline and sector. You will not be compared with others who have more experience than you. Include academic and non-academic relevant experience here, for example, publications, conference participation, granted patents, etc. Include bibliographic information where useful for publications, including impact factor, number of citations and journal rankings in the field. If you are not the first or lead author on publications, briefly explain your contribution. And do include all relevant experience here. Think beyond the academic environment and include teaching, reviewing, consultancy, supervision, event organisation, public outreach and communication, etc. Now for the impact section of the proposal, this is divided into 3 subheadings. It is important to demonstrate in these sections the expected impact for the fellowship as outlined in the MSCA work programme. These expected impacts at a researcher level, at an organisation level and at a system level are shown here. You should familiarise yourself with these and try to apply them in the writing of your proposal. Section 2.1, enhancing the future career prospects of the researcher after the fellowship. The expected impacts are shown here in red. So show how the skills or experience improves your employability. Refer to specific policies or articles of relevance to your area, which call out for better skills or knowledge in this sector. Give specific examples of your career opportunities in the academic and non-academic sectors, and why would the skills and experiences acquired during the fellowship benefit such employers? For example, contributing to better quality research and innovation. Describe the impact of the collaborations made during the fellowship. Highlight the impact intersectoral and interdisciplinary collaborations during the fellowship. For example, collaborations made will allow for a higher impact R&I output on your future work, thus more knowledge and ideas converted into products and services. If relevant, concisely describe the impact of improving gender balance in your sector. You may find useful statistics at this link. How will your research contribute to the knowledge-based economy and society? Remind the evaluator about the importance of your research in addressing a challenge or priority at a European or global level. Use numbers to highlight the problem and, if possible, refer to important policies and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, pinpointing where your research is applicable. How will the skills you develop allow you to address an element of the problem or challenge after the fellowship? Now for section 2.2, quality of the proposed measures to exploit and disseminate the project results, which should be split into these 2 headings. As an introduction to this section, remind the evaluator what the key project results are. You need to do this initially so that you can thereafter describe how they will be disseminated and exploited. Examples of outputs include a prototype, new guidelines, standards, feasibility studies, etc. Firstly, how will you disseminate the project results to target audiences? And these are expert audiences. Describe who the target audiences are and what dissemination activities you will use. In the second section, you should describe how the project results will be exploited, outlining what the benefit of exploiting results is and how the results of the project will be exploited. Here, firstly, describe the target audiences for your results, expert audiences. Specific examples must be given. Who will be interested in the results described and why? What is the benefit to them? Use a diagram such as that shown here to describe all of the different target audiences. In any case, this can be of use to you to carry out an exercise in order to visualize these expert audiences, such as specific industries, associations, types of policy makers if you're going to compile policy documents, regulators, etc. Do not confuse this with the public outreach. Secondly, describe the dissemination activities to ensure that this audience learns about the research results. Use examples such as conferences, industry events, journal publications, workshops, social media, trade shows, book chapters, etc. Any activities should be included in the work package and Gantt chart as tasks. Also, there should be associated deliverables, for example, a publication, a book chapter, etc. Describe each dissemination activity with specific and realistic details using a table such as that shown below. This will allow you to detail the activity, target audience, when this will occur, where, and the metrics. The metrics are quite important to include. Describe the exploitation methods of your project results that will be used and the impact on the target user, society or industry. Examples of exploitation methods are shown in this table. For example, collaborative research. The results will be used for building or contributing to collaborative research projects. Product development, contributing to a product, process, technique, design, etc. Standardization activities are emphasized as important by the EC. In this case, you could detail that results would be used to develop new standardization activities or contribute to ongoing work. Spin-offs are another such example. If an exploitation method entails intellectual property or commercial potential, be sure to mention from whom you will seek advice in the institution on these matters, typically the Technology Transfer Office. Refer to and ensure to detail that you will comply with the MSCA rules for IP. Read the IP management in Horizon 2020 for the MSCA, available at this link. For global fellowships, describe how you have decided to allocate IP between the two hosts. The rules for this are simplified, and it is important to discuss and outline these plans in advance. Now for section 2.3, quality of the proposed measures to communicate the project activities to different target audiences. Now describe the target audiences for the communication of the project activities during the lifetime of the project from beginning to end. These should be non-expert audiences, and again you can use a diagram to outline these as shown on the right. Such audiences include primary or secondary schools, the general public, community groups or charities, patient groups, end users, etc. What are the key messages you're trying to get across to the different audiences? How does the action's work relate to our everyday lives? Why does the target audience need to know about the action? Is your research output going to encourage a career in research? How will you increase the gender balance in certain areas? If so, please do communicate such unique aspects of the project. A table can be effectively used to outline your communication activities plan, such as that shown here, detailing for each one how it will be done, the target audience, where it will take place, when, approximate timing, which can then also be included in the Gantt chart of appropriate, as well as the appropriate metrics. The implementation section, important to get right, is divided into 3 subheadings. Firstly, 3.1, coherence and effectiveness of the work plan, including appropriateness of the allocation of tasks and resources. This section has 3 parts. Firstly, use work package tables such as those shown here. This is an example given to aid you and is not provided within the template. Secondly, provide a block of text detailing the appropriateness of your tasks. And thirdly, include a Gantt chart, which counts as part of the 10-page limit. A Gantt chart example is included within the template, and we recommend you use this. Firstly, for the work package tables, there should be a maximum of 6 work packages, of which 2 to 3 should be devoted to research work packages. These can run sequentially or concurrently and can be interconnected. Do ensure they're in line with the details provided in 1.1 research methodology, and that the numbering is consistent. A work package for management is usually used, entailing meetings with supervisors and standard reporting, etc. A work package for training and transfer of knowledge is used to delineate the tasks or events which should match the details provided in section 1.2. It is also, if space is very limiting, possible to have one work package for management and training. Finally, a work package devoted to dissemination and exploitation, communication and public engagement. The tasks and events and deliverables here should match the details provided in sections 2.2 and 2.3. Use a work package table such as that shown here. The work package number with the start month and the end month. You do not need to give the exact date, but just the estimated month number. The secondment or TC host remind the evaluator where time outside the main host will be spent. With respect to the work package title, use a title of a few words. Keep this concise. The tasks are the steps, events, etc. that you will carry out to complete the work package and should be appropriately numbered as shown here. The deliverables constitute distinct outputs of the work package, such as reports, conference proceedings, data analysis, documents, prototypes, software, etc. There could be different versions of deliverables. For example, the career development plan is modified every 6 months, and this can be shown as a deliverable at the appropriate time point. Milestones, numbered as shown here, are control points to help with progress and allow moving on to the next stage of the project, for example, completion of data analysis, development of career development plans, etc. In the interest of space, you might only consider including deliverables and milestones in the Gantt chart. With respect to the short text now, outlining the appropriateness of your tasks, at this point you must keep it very concise. Use bullet points if possible. Refer to your tasks in the work package tables in the section beforehand. Describe how the work packages, their timing and the workload make sense so that the evaluators can see that the project is feasible. Explain why the length of the fellowship, the number of person months is appropriate to complete all the work foreseen in the work packages, and aim to highlight here the strengths and feasibility. Thirdly, for the Gantt chart, use the style Gantt chart shown below as provided in the template. Adapt as needed according to the activity you have proposed in your work packages. Remove any columns that refer a duration longer than that of your proposal, and add as much detail as needed for your proposal, ensuring that it is nonetheless legible when printed out for the ease of the evaluators. Now for section 3.2, appropriateness of the management structure and procedures, including risk management. Clearly show that you're addressing everything asked for by providing the 3 bold headings as shown here. You must be concise at this point. Provide a diagram showing the management structure. The supervisors and the researchers are the main managers assisted by the host organization structures. For example, a communication and outreach officer, the TTO, etc. Secondly, progress monitoring. Explain how the research, training and career planning will be monitored. Refer back to section 1.2 as you do not have much space to detail this here. How will supervisors support the project progress? Explain the meeting schedule. Thirdly, risks and contingency plans. Here you should use a table. Identify specific risks, research risks and management risks that could delay the progress of the deliverables, such as a delayed start, equipment failure, etc., and contingency plans. It is important not to forget this aspect, as applications are frequently critiqued for not appropriately identifying risks and relevant contingency plans. If an entity with a legal or capital link is involved, please name it here, as well as support services provided by the host institution. List these as shown below in a table, describing how the host provides an excellent environment for hosting and supporting. So break this table down into the different support services, such as HR services, the TTO, who will support you with exploitation aspects, and your access, if relevant. Finally, section 3.3, appropriateness of the institutional environment and infrastructure. At this point, you will have very little space left, so you must be concise. This section should read like the conclusion of what has been described previously. Remind the evaluator about the contribution and commitment of the main host, the secondment host and/or the third country host to the various activities in the project with respect to research activities, referring back to the research methodology and state of the art in the excellence section. Reminding the evaluator that the host is an expert in the area. With respect to the integration of the researcher to the team, referring back to section 1.3. Also, you can refer to host services described in section 3.2. Refer to the excellent supervision again, as was detailed in section 1.3, and highlight the opportunity to receive further training in research skills and transferable skills as outlined previously in section 1.2. A table can be provided listing the key infrastructure necessary to complete the research and training activities. Do not explain the infrastructure here as you do not have sufficient space. Research or technical infrastructure includes equipment, labs, software, technology, etc. And administrative infrastructure comprises staff training resources, library use, access to the finance office, research office, etc. Now we move to part B2, which comprises the CV of the experienced researcher that we have previously explained, the capacity of the participating organisations. Section 6 comprises ethical issues, and 7, the letter of commitment, only necessary for global fellowships.
B2, Section 5, capacity of the participating organisations. Please do read the text and guidance given on page 44 of the 2020 IF Guide for applicants in order to complete this. Here a list and details must be given regarding all participating organisations, the beneficiary, and the partner organisation in Europe where a secondment will be carried out as part of the fellowship, if applicable. It must be clear here for the experts that the participating organisations, the beneficiary and the partner organisation, if applicable, have the operational resources and the capacity to implement the action, the project here.
One page for each organisation must be provided for the beneficiary and for any partner organisations. As you can see, the information must be kept concise, and it is important that the capacity, both with respect to past experience and how they can accommodate you and provide appropriate premises for you, etc., must be clear. Please contact your research office in the host organisation in advance so that this information can be provided to you.
Part B2, Section 6, Ethics. Please do read information given about this on pages 46 to 50 of the 2020 Guide for Applicants. In Administrative Forms Part A, if ethics issues have been identified, you must carry out an ethics review and complete the table. If you indicate ethics issues, you must, in this section, describe how the proposal meets the EU and national legal and ethics requirement of the country or countries where the task raising the ethical issues is to be carried out. You must ensure timely compliance with the proposed research with ethical principles and the applicable international, EU and national law. And thirdly, you must explain in detail how you intend to address the ethical issues flagged. Part B2, Section 7, the Letter of Commitment. This letter of commitment is a requirement for the Global Fellowship proposals, without which they will be declared inadmissible. The minimum requirements for this letter include a heading or stamp from the institution on appropriate letterhead and signed by an individual of authority within that institution. It must be up to date. This is particularly the case for those resubmitting this year. The text must demonstrate the will to actively participate in the proposed identified action, naming the project and giving the precise role. A non-binding template example has been provided on page 51 of the 2020 Guide for Applicants.
The EC will award a Seal of Excellence to any fellowship applicant scoring 85% or higher. This seal does not guarantee funding by any Irish funding body, but we do encourage you to include it in your CV on subsequent funding applications.
This slide depicts the timeline for this application process. The call has been open since April 8th, and the deadline, as mentioned, falls at 4 p.m. Irish time on September 9th. I advise you to submit often and early. Remember, it's the last version that you submit that will be evaluated. Please do go through the administrative aspects in advance. You don't wish your application to be declared ineligible because of an administrative error. Be sure you obtain all information, and for those applying for the Global Fellowships, please ensure you have your letter of commitment prior to submitting. The results will be sent to you, the evaluation summary report, in early February next year. Please do note that after that, your start date is then agreed with the project officer at REA. However, for those who have current fellowships, those on co-funds, etc., and wish to plan for the future, or who wish to apply this year because they're particularly competitive at this point in time, you can defer the starting date of your fellowship to the latest, the 1st of September 2022.
Finally, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope this webinar has been useful to you. Here is our email address. However, should you have queries pertaining to your eligibility or the infrastructure and supports available to you with respect to training, TTO, etc. in your future host organisation, please contact them directly. This application is written in collaboration with your supervisor and your future host organisation, and this is important in order to ensure a successful application. On the right, you can see a link to our website. This webinar and our handbook will be available on our events and training webpage in the coming days. Here you can also see a link to our LinkedIn group and to our Twitter account. All the best.